Hi, good morning everyone. Teng Boo from Capital Dynamics again. Good to see you all. Hope you have had a good week and then the weekend will be another productive weekend for you. For those of you who watched last week's video, you might notice that I'm wearing a t-shirt which got the same wordings as last week's t-shirt, except that this is white instead of black. Well, the reason why we especially made this t-shirt is because the impersonation of Teng Boo is very rampant and a lot of innocent, especially retirees, have been scammed. Many of them have lost a big chunk of their retirement savings. So we are desperate, we do not know what else we can do. We have done so much to make sure that people are not so naive, people are not so greedy, and get scammed so easily. So this is part of our efforts in reducing the number of people who have been cheated left and right. Well, that is the scams that's happening here. We're talking about another scam, which is the topic of today, how America became great. I call it a bedtime story for Donald Trump and Joe Biden, so that, it's like telling the small children before they go to bed fairy tales. This will be part one. This video will be it's going to be a series, right? So if you are interested to know about America's past, how America's past affected her present and her future, don't miss this series. This is a very, very unusual series, full of facts based on research, proper research. So let me begin by, you know what Trump version 2 has been promising in a lot of areas, right? The one area that he has promised is he's going to impose tariff on every country in the world, except, of course, on America herself. On China, 60 plus 10. On Canada and Mexico, 25%. On the rest of the world, maybe 10, maybe 20, depend on what mood he's in. So that is a repeat of Trump version 1 when he was in president from 2017 to 2021. But that's not the end of it. His tariff threat is not the end of Trump. He has also accused China of attacking the United States with fentanyl. He has claimed that he has got many talks with China about the massive amounts of drugs being sent to the United States, but to no avail. While he is accusing China of not living up to the promise and not doing what China can to make sure that drugs are not pouring into America, mainly through Mexico. China's side has, of course, disputed this, and the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said, China is one of the world's toughest countries on counter narcotics, both in terms of policy and its implementation. Fentanyl is an issue for the United States. In the spirit of humanity, China has given support to America's response to this issue. All Donald Trump has to do is to look at the opium war that China has to encounter in the 19th century, the first opium war in 1839, 1840, and the second opium war, when Britain and the European powers literally delivered tons and tons and tons of opium into China. I will talk about this in another series, but the United States maybe should see what has happened to other countries in the past and how they stop it. I think the simple advice to Donald Trump is this: When the buying stops, the selling stops, right? They told us in the past, I think some wildlife NGO says that, when the buying stops, in other words, buying of the animals, the extinct, the protected animals stops, then the killing will stop. So it's the same. You want to stop the supply? Make sure you stop your consumption in America. But that's beside the point. We're not talking about this. We're talking about how America became great. And Donald Trump has also promised mass deportation scheme, right? He claims that he's deported 1.5 million people in his first term. And in his second term, he's going to remove maybe 1 million, who knows what the figure is. So we will know come 20th January 2025, where Trump will ignite the largest deportation operation in American history. Trump, he loves hyperbole. He loves to use the grandest of words. But we will see what happens when he becomes president officially. So for this part one, I'd like to draw your attention to this book called Smuggler Nation: How Illicit Trade Made America Great. It's written by Peter Andres. He's not your kind of extremist or man in the street. He's a learned academician. He's an American political scientist. He's a professor at Brown University. For those of you who are not familiar, Brown University is one of America's top universities. Don't give up, stay on. This is a very interesting talk. I bought this book quite some time ago. You can see from here, right? You can see all the marks. And it's not that thick, it's about a bit less than 400 pages. If you include all the references, and so it's about over 400 pages. If you can, please buy a copy and read it. Professor Peter Andres has written it in a very simple way. There's no jargon, no political, technical words, nothing of that sort. It's like a story. It's like a drama. Buy it and read it, because in this video of ours, we cannot go through the whole book. We can only pick very selected items. So let me just share with you a video of his, if you want. This is about 11 years ago. There's an interview that he conducted. Basically, he's giving you a bit of a summary of the Smuggler Nation. So let me just give you the website for you to click on for the YouTube link. Let me just now move on to some extracts, which I think you find shocking and enlightening. Now, this is from his book, right? I highlight means Peter Andres himself. I highlight the profound but often overlooked role of clandestine commerce in the nation's birth, meaning America, in the birth of America, in America's economic development, geographic expansion, and foreign relations, as well as the role of anti-smuggling initiatives in vastly expanding the policing authority and reach of the US federal government. Smuggling, it turns out, has been as much about building up the American state as about subverting smuggling. Very interesting. Peter Andres wrote, through its long interaction with the underworld of smuggling, the United States has emerged not only with a sprawling law enforcement bureaucracy and prisons overflowing with convicted drug law offenders, but is also a policing superpower, promoting its favored prohibitions and policing practices to his neighbors and the rest of the world. For those of you who are interested, all the things that we have to do now, anti-money laundering, know your client, KYC, and all those things, a big part of it is also related to this policing superpower, because the smuggling world and how it's related to America is something that people don't really talk about, people are not familiar with, which is why this book is extremely important. So for better or worse, and for worse, smuggling was an essential ingredient in the very birth and development of America and its transformation into a global power. I'm very sure, I'm not sure how many of you are listening to this, I am very sure 99.99% of you would have never thought that smuggling made America great. So that is why I said at the beginning of this talk that this is a bedtime story to be told to Donald Trump and Joe Biden and any other future American presidents. So what Professor Peter Andres said is, only by including the lens of smuggling in looking back at the American experience can we fully answer some crucial questions. For example, why was there such an intense colonial outrage against the British imperial authorities? Was it all about fighting for freedom? Which is what the standard textbook will tell you, right? How did George Washington manage to defeat the world's greatest military power at that time, which is Great Britain? How did America industrialize and catch up with England technologically? And why did the American Civil War last so long, given that the northern side had very big military advantage? Why are the tomatoes that Americans eat so cheap? And why is American agribusiness so globally competitive? Now, you wouldn't have thought that the answer to all these very differing type of questions, the answer lies in smuggling. America, the smuggling nation. Shocking? Anti-American? No. This is based on proper research. Like I said, he's given you 40, 50 pages of sources of bibliography. Read it for yourself, so that the next time when you hear something about what actually made America great, you would know what the truth is. Why does America have such a massive criminal justice system, including the world's largest prison population? In various ways and to varying degrees, smuggling provides the essential part of the answer. Of course, don't get us wrong. Professor Andres said, smuggling is not the only thing that matters. We all know that. But this book tells you and shows you how and why we should place smuggling in front and the center than in the conventional story of the American epic, of the American greatness. Because if you talk to anyone, what made America great? Very few, very, very few would be able to say smuggling did the job or played a very major role in making America great. It's a nation of smugglers. The agents, let me just read this story to you. The agents move in to seize the illicit shipment, but the traffickers turn on them, shooting the senior officer and burning his vehicle. With the local courts hopelessly compromised and corrupt, the outraged authorities wanted to extradite the perpetrators of the brazen crime. But this only made them more defiant and violent, and they were never caught or prosecuted. This may sound like Tijuana in Mexico, right? Not so long ago. But the year was 1772 AD. And the place where this incident took place was near Professor Andrea's adopted hometown of Providence in Rhode Island. Tijuana, this is America, this is Mexico, right at the bottom. Tijuana is on the bottom, the lower part of Los Angeles. This is Tijuana. Rhode Island is on this side. Rhode Island is on the eastern side, northeastern side of America. The ringleader of that attack that Professor Andres wrote about is Mr. John Brown, a prominent local merchant whose business interests included smuggling, privateering, and slave trading. Now, what is interesting is John Brown was one of the founders of Brown University, which is the employer of Professor Andres. This incident became, famously known as the Gaspy Affair, in which the British custom vessel, the HMS Gaspy, was stormed, looted, and torched late at night by an armed group of local American citizens in retaliation for the British officers cracking down on their illegal trade. Smuggler nation. It reveals that the often celebrated rise of American capitalism is all about contraband capitalism, including the creation of some of the country's first family fortunes. It shows that the transformation of America into a consumer society is also very much about illicit mass consumption. Right? You cannot blame everything on smuggling, but smuggling is too often hidden and out of sight in the conventional narrative of what made America great. I love the way he describes it. American capitalism versus contraband capitalism. My goodness. So, you can see these are still extracts from his book, right? This rebellion, the American rebellion, was actually a backlash. The War of Independence is often told to you, or you know it as something that's the Americans fighting for freedom. Nothing of that sort. It was basically fighting for freedom for them to be engaged in illicit businesses or smuggling and so on. So in many respects, the War of Independence was a backlash against the militarized British crackdown on illicit trade in the British colonies at that time. And the colonial merchants were leading players in the Atlantic smuggling economy, most notably the smuggling of West Indies molasses to the distilleries in New England. And conflicts over smuggling and the overzealous British customs enforcement played a very important role in the tensions leading up to the outbreak of the War of Independence. So when you see a Hollywood movie about all the American heroes in the War of Independence, please remember what Peter Andres said about America being a smuggler nation. Pivotal incident. I'm sure all of you, I wouldn't say all, many of you have heard about the Boston Tea Party, right? So pivotal incidents and protests such as the Boston Tea Party were closely connected to smugglers. And it is appropriate that the first person to sign the Declaration of Independence was Boston's most famous merchant smuggler, John Hancock. So here you go. At least you know extra truth about the Declaration of Independence and the Boston Tea Party.
Are you tired of doing investment research on stock markets? Want to spend time on your hobbies or go out with your friends instead? Introducing iCapital, where you can get independent, objective, and comprehensive investment advice on the go. Available in English and Mandarin and can be accessed via app, website, and print copy. We provide thorough, first-hand research-based findings on listed companies, economies, and stock markets, and clear perspective of how markets interact and how they influence investments, as well as provide Malaysian and global stock recommendations, stock portfolios with outstanding performance to follow. Subscribe now to iCapital for stock news. From only 49 ringgit a year, start investing like a fund manager. Subscribe now at www.icapital.biz.
Conveniently forgotten in today's intellectual property protection debates. America loves to say China never follow IP laws and so on and so forth, is that early US leaders such as Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton is a very revered person in American history, right? He's not just a nobody. So US leaders such as Alexander Hamilton enthusiastically encouraged intellectual privacy and technology smuggling during America's initial industrialization process, especially in the textile industry. This smuggling depended on the illegal importation of skilled workers in violation of British immigration laws to assemble, operate, and improve on the latest machinery. The most famous British artisan to illegally move to America was Samuel Slater. He is known as the father of American Industrial Revolution, the father of American Industrial Revolution, who was hired to work on and perfect cotton spinning machinery that was smuggled from Britain to Rhode Island. And many of you might have heard of manifest destiny. It's a term called American exceptionalism, and there's another concept called American manifest destiny, right? So when you look at manifest destiny now, it's very different. But in the 19th century, Americans interpreted this concept of manifest destiny to include a divine right to smuggle. The American frontier was a smuggling frontier. The manifest destiny was what led to, motivated and created these American movements from the east of what is America now to the west, where they expanded westward to the Pacific shoreline. Smugglers of all sorts and smuggling of all types were at the forefront of America's aggressive territorial expansion. Of course, I'm just highlighting one nasty aspect of this manifest destiny. There are a lot of others, like how they brutally killed the Native Americans and so on and so forth. So America's Industrial Revolution is actually illicit, right? Although typically glossed over in the sanitized accounts found in US high school textbooks. As a young and newly industrial nation, the United States aggressively engaged in the kind of intellectual property theft that it now insists other countries prohibit and crack down on. Smuggled machinery at that time violated British export laws. Smuggled migrants, which really meant self-smuggling, even if sometimes involved aggressive recruiting by underground American agents abroad, also violated British immigration laws. So, what they meant at that time, for example, Alexander Hamilton's famous report on manufacturers. This is a very famous document in American history, which was submitted in 1791. Basically, when they say borrow, what they're telling you to do is to steal. Because when you borrow, you have to give back, right? But they never had any intention of giving the inventions back. So Alexander Hamilton was the Secretary of the Treasury at that time, argued that to procure all such machines as are known in any part of Europe can only require a proper provision and due pains. The knowledge of several of the most important of them is already possessed. The preparation of them here is in most cases practicable on nearly equal terms. Notice that Hamilton was not urging the development of domestic indigenous inventions to compete with Europe, but rather the direct procurement of European technologies, right, through proper provision and due pains. What does that mean? Professor Andres explained to us, proper provision and due pains mean breaking the laws of other countries. As the report acknowledged, most manufacturing nations prohibit, under severe penalties, the exportation of implements and machines which they have either invented or improved. So, this report on manufactures by Alexander Hamilton, part of it can therefore be read as a manifesto calling for state-sponsored theft and smuggling. This is how America became great. I'm not sure whether you are still in a state of shock, but that's what America did. That's what America is doing now. And this is what America will be doing in the future. Alexander Hamilton appointed, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Cox, as Assistant Secretary of Treasury. And this guy was one of the most well-known and outspoken advocates for illegally acquiring European manufacturing technologies. And he personally invested in several technology smuggling schemes. I wonder what it would be like if you have such a person doing these kind of things in the present world. I don't know what Donald Trump would say about a person like that. The U.S. Patent Act of 1793, right, require patent applicants to take an oath certifying that their invention was original. But the administrator of the patents did not even insist that the oath be taken. Moreover, this act did not protect foreign investors. They could not obtain a U.S. patent on an invention that they had really previously patented in Europe. What this meant is that somebody could steal a foreign invention, smuggle it to the US, and develop it for America's domestic commercial applications. So, the American patent registration system allowed wealthy importers of European technologies, such as the Boston Associates, to claim exclusive rights on to imported innovations. And they will use the American courts to invalidate their claims and intimidate their European competitors. Great, this is really smart, but illicit. So what Professor Andreas says is this: through America's discriminatory patent rules, America became the world's most notorious haven for industrial piracy. So Donald Trump wants to make America great again, which is why I said I need to tell him my bedtime story. This is about how New York, the city of New York, right, became the root of evil. This US Senator William Seward met opposition from New York businessmen when he proposed new legislation in 1858 to control the slave trade. So Senator William bluntly responded, "The root of the evil is in the great commercial cities, and I frankly admit, in the city of New York." And all the objection to the bill, to this slavery bill, came from the commercial interests in New York. In that same year, the newspaper, the Times of London, described New York as the greatest slave trading market in the world. And in 1863, the US consul in Cuba, Havana, reported that however humiliating may be the confessions, 90% of the vessels engaged in the slave trade are American. And a lot of slave traders, a lot of the opium traders were founders of America's universities. So, what Professor is telling us is that a neglect of the past really distorts our view of the present and the future. Contrary to the conventional wisdom, illicit globalization is not entirely new. Indeed, rather than a new threat to America, it is the continuation of an old American tradition. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, please read your history. Please read your American history thoroughly and properly. Now, pick any university across America and you will find stories similar to Brown University. Look hard enough and dig deep enough, and you will inevitably find traces of all sorts of smuggling in all sorts of places. Brown University, like other American institutions of higher education, is a smuggler university within a smuggler nation embedded in a smuggler world. My God, it can't be worse than that. Indeed, as it has always been so, a founder of the University of Brown University was, after all, Rhode Island's richest smuggler. John Brown, the smuggler, would no doubt be proud that the smuggler tradition in America remains alive and well in the United States of America. It is fascinating. Look, like I told you, I cannot give you all the quotations inside. There's so many chapters. I've just picked up some for you, and you already by now have a sense of what truly made America great. And then here you have this 47th President of the United States telling the rest of his people, telling the rest of the world, make America great again. That's scary, isn't it? Right? If Donald Trump version 2 is going to follow the tradition of his past Americans, America is going to be the greatest smuggling nation in the world. Gosh. And there he is, wanting to impose tariffs on every country in the world. Let's listen to this quotation from this famous philosopher, George Santayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. How true. How very true. Because Trump version 1, Joe Biden, Trump version 2 have already repeated what the America of the past has been doing. Like I said, if you are not open-minded enough, what I've just told you, you say, oh, here he goes, anti this, anti-West again. I'm nothing of that sort. I'm not anti this or anti that, right? What I'm telling you is Professor Andres is a professor in the Department of Political Science in a top American university who took the trouble to write a well-researched book. And I think if you are really interested to know how America became great, you should at least listen to my video, or if better still, buy a copy of his book and read it for yourself. Remember, this is part 1. There's going to be part 2, part 3. So for those of you who have not subscribed to Capital Dynamics YouTube channel, please subscribe, because like I explained in the past, what you get from this channel will be very unique. You probably can't get it from any other YouTube channels. Here we're not trying to sell you anything, we're just trying to make people more aware, more educated, more open-minded. Like it, share it, comment. And I hope to see you again next Saturday. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.